Drive. Samuel Richter had always been fascinated by the boundaries between man and beast. His lab, hidden deep within the Carpathian Mountains, was a testament to years of obsessive research. It started innocently. His goal was to enhance human strength and resilience through genetic manipulation. But as with all experiments of ambition, things spiraled out of control. Richter had isolated a peculiar strain of DNA in wolves, one that allowed them to survive under extreme conditions. His plan was simple: merge this primal resilience with human DNA. His subjects, desperate volunteers seeking power, were assured of glory and strength beyond imagination. The serum was administered. At first, everything seemed promising. Their muscles grew, reflexes sharpened, and senses heightened. It was a triumph. Until the full moon rose. The first transformation was slow, agonizing, the screams of the subjects reverberating through the steel walls of the lab. Their bodies twisted, bones snapped, and their skin split as thick fur erupted across their forms. Richter watched in horror as the men he had promised greatness became something monstrous. Savage, uncontrollable beasts howled at the moon, their yellow eyes gleaming with an insatiable hunger. The experiment had worked too well. Drive. Richter's failure was not in creating werewolves, but in underestimating the primal rage that came with their new nature. The creatures turned on him, tearing apart the lab in a frenzy. He managed to flee into the night, but his troubles were only beginning. Unbeknownst to him, the transformation wasn't just tied to the full moon. The serum had rewritten the very fabric of their DNA, and the werewolves retained fragments of their humanity, memories of their previous lives. They could blend in during the day, hiding amongst the villagers who lived in the shadows of the mountains. They were intelligent, cunning, and worse yet, they could spread their curse with a single bite. Weeks later, strange disappearances began. Locals whispered about enormous wolves lurking in the forests, their howls echoing eerily at twilight. No one suspected that their neighbors, their friends, could be hiding a monstrous secret, and the infection was spreading. Drive. Richter, plagued by guilt and fear, tried to find a way to reverse the serum, but every effort failed. The mutations had gone beyond science. What was worse, his own hands began to tremble, his reflection growing less familiar each day. He hadn't just unleashed a plague, he was now part of it. One night, as the clouds parted to reveal the full moon, he felt the first snap of his bones. His scream echoed through the forest, but it was soon drowned out by the howling of the pack. The werewolves had already begun to claim their territory, and now their creator would join them in hunting the remnants of humanity. Yet, a deeper truth lingered, one even Richter couldn't have predicted. The serum hadn't merely transformed humans into wolves. There was something darker, something ancient stirring within their blood, something that was far more sinister than simple rage. The werewolves weren't just predators. They were vessels for a force older than mankind itself, and it had only just awakened. Drive. Richter awoke in the aftermath of his first transformation, his body battered and bruised. He was lying at the edge of a stream, the water stained with blood, whether his own or someone else's. He couldn't tell. His mind was foggy, distant memories of the night before tugging at the corners of his consciousness. He remembered the transformation, the pain, and then nothing. But there were flashes, faces, terrified screams, and the metallic tang of blood in his mouth. He stood up shakily, catching his reflection in the water. His eyes were no longer his own. They glowed faintly, a sickly yellow hue, like the eyes of the creatures he had once thought to control. Stumbling through the dense forest, Richter felt something inside him stir a pull, guiding him deeper into the wilderness. It wasn't just hunger. It was something more, something ancient that gnawed at his very soul. His mind raced, trying to understand what had gone wrong. The serum, it had done more than just unlock the vault. It had unlocked something, alive. Hours passed as he wandered aimlessly, until he stumbled upon an ancient ruin, half buried in the earth. It was a forgotten place, swallowed by time and the forest, but it hummed with a power that made his skin crawl. Strange markings covered the stone walls, symbols that looked both human and alien. In the center of the ruin, a massive stone slab lay cracked open, as if something had escaped from within. His heart raced, There was a connection here, he could feel it in his bones. The serum, the transformations, the rise of the werewolves. It was all tied to this place. Richter realized that his experiment had unknowingly tapped into something older than human science, something that had been waiting. As he approached the stone slab, he noticed a faint glow coming from within the crack. The air around him grew colder, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. A low, guttural voice echoed in his mind, whispering words he couldn't understand. But one thing was clear. Asterisk, asterisk, they were no longer just werewolves, asterisk, asterisk. Something far darker had taken root in them, something that was awakening with every transformation. The serum hadn't just fused human and wolf, it had resurrected an ancient force, one that had been sealed away for millennia. And now, it was spreading. Just as Richter tried to comprehend the gravity of his discovery, a figure stepped out from the shadows of the ruin. It was one of his original test subjects, Merrick, a man once quiet and reserved. But now, his eyes were feral, his body towering and misshapen even in human form. You feel it too, don't you, Doctor? Marek's voice was a low growl, laced with a madness Richter had never seen before. We are more than wolves now. We are the harbingers of something greater. Richter's blood ran cold. What have I done? Marek grinned, baring his teeth. You didn't create us. You merely unlocked the door. Something is coming, Doctor, and we are its heralds. As Marek stepped closer, Richter noticed something unnatural swirling in the air around him, a darkness that seemed alive, breathing, pulsating with malevolent energy. Marek's body was only a vessel now, and Richter could feel that same darkness stirring inside him as well. We will become gods, Marek whispered, his voice merging with the guttural whispers that had haunted Richter's mind. And you will join us. Before Richter could react, Marek lunged forward, his claws extending. But Richter, now sensing the full force of the ancient power within him, fought back. A brutal struggle ensued, the two half-human, half-monsters battling in the ruins, their roars shaking the very ground beneath them. But as they fought, Richter realized something horrifying. The more he fought, the stronger the darkness inside him grew, feeding off his rage, his fear. He was losing control, not just of the fight, but of his own soul. With a final, desperate effort, he threw Marek off and fled into the forest. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized the truth. The serum had not just altered their bodies, it had opened a gateway to something unspeakable. And now, that force was using them to spread its influence. Richter knew that he needed to stop it, to close the gateway before it consumed the world. But as the whispers grew louder in his mind, he wondered if he had the strength to resist. He was no longer a scientist. He was a pawn in something far larger, something that had been waiting for this moment for centuries. And the full moon was coming again. Drive. Samuel Richter ran through the forest, his breath ragged, the weight of the ancient power inside him pressing down like a suffocating shadow. He could feel it growing, crawling beneath his skin, whispering promises of domination, of becoming something far greater than human or beast. But with those promises came the cold reality. He was losing himself, piece by piece. The forest seemed to twist around him, the trees looming like silent witnesses to his descent. The ruins he had fled now felt like a distant nightmare, but the dark force they had unleashed followed, relentless. His body ached from the transformation, and his mind was a battlefield, fighting off the ever-increasing pull of the malevolent entity that had taken root in his very blood. He stumbled into a clearing, collapsing onto his knees. The moon hung high in the sky, fat and full, bathing the world in an eerie silver glow. His heart pounded as the familiar pain began to surge through his bones again, heralding another transformation. This time, though, it was different. It wasn't just the Volf. It was something darker, something far more twisted clawing its way to the surface. From the shadows, Marek appeared once more, his hulking form looming over Richter. But there was no smug grin this time, no taunting words. His eyes, now entirely black, were filled with a hunger that went beyond anything Richter had seen in a beast. It was as if Marek had become the embodiment of the ancient darkness they had unleashed. You feel it, don't you, Doctor? Marek's voice was no longer human. It was a low, growling reverberation, echoing with the weight of ages. We were never meant to resist it. We are asterisk its asterisk now. Richter tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His vision blurred as his muscles contorted painfully, his skin prickling with the sensation of her breaking through. He had to fight it, he had to stop this. But as the pain overtook him, he knew it was already too late. Marek's twisted form stepped closer, his eyes locking onto Richter's. There's no escape. We are part of something much older, something that has waited for centuries. And now, it's awake. The world will change, Doctor, and we will be its firstborn. A guttural scream tore through Richter as his body convulsed. His skin stretched, fur spreading rapidly across his limbs, but this time the transformation felt different. His mind splintered, darkness weaving through his thoughts, erasing memories, erasing everything that had once been asterisk him asterisk. The whispers he had tried so desperately to ignore grew louder, their voices now a chaotic symphony of promises, threats, and truths. Through the haze of his transformation, Richter saw shapes moving in the shadows of the trees, more figures. The other test subjects, drawn to the ruin's power, had come. Their forms were grotesque, half wolf, half something else, something inhuman. They had all succumbed to the ancient force now coursing through their veins. And soon, so would he? The pack closed in around him, their eyes reflecting the dark energy that pulsed through the night. Marek stepped forward, his clawed hand reaching out to Richter. Accept it, Doctor. You're no longer just a man or a beast. You're something more. Something eternal. With a final surge of pain, Richter's body fully transformed. He let out a bone-chilling howl. But the sound was more than just animalistic. It carried the echoes of the ancient force that had taken him. In that moment, he was no longer Samuel Richter. He was something beyond comprehension. A vessel for the dark power that had awakened in the depths of the forgotten ruins. The forest grew silent as the pack of twisted werewolves stood together under the full moon, their collective howls rising into the night. But there was no triumph in their cries, only the cold certainty of what was to come. The dark force had been unleashed, and the world would soon feel its wrath. The pack was only the beginning, the harbingers of an age where humanity would fall to the ancient power that had waited in the shadows for centuries. As the last shred of Samuel Richter's mind faded into oblivion, the dark entity spoke its final, chilling words. Asterisk, it was never about the werewolves. It was always about the darkness. Asterisk, the night swallowed their howls, and with it, the last hope of stopping what had already begun. The end.